Welcome along to the LitFest channel here on Emirates. We're on TV for the first time, so as well as listening to our guests, you can actually see them in the flesh, as it were. Now, the LitFest channel is where we get to meet some of the many authors who made it to Dubai back in February for the 12th annual Emirates Festival of Literature, or LitFest for short. Next up, it's my great pleasure to welcome Mitch Albom to Emirates. Mitch is a best-selling author, screenwriter, playwright, and journalist. He's the author of, get this, no less than 6 consecutive #1 New York Times bestsellers, and has sold, at the last count, close on 40 million books, translated into around 50 languages, probably even more by the time you get to watch this program. His memoir, Tuesdays with Morrie, is the best-selling memoir of all time, and today we're going to talk about his latest book called Finding Chica. Well, Mitch, welcome to Dubai. First time?
Yes, it is.
And welcome to Emirates.
Thank you very much.
Of all the interviews I've done this time around, you're perhaps the hardest to know where to begin because you're a musician, a sports writer, a novelist, a writer of non-fiction, a patron of goodness knows how many charities. So where did this incredible journey that you've been on, where did it all start for you?
Well, generally, I would look at my career as a couple of phases. I mean, the musician stuff, that was very early. And while it was close to my heart, I failed miserably. And so that was over pretty quickly in terms of a professional part of it. Then I became a sports writer and really probably would have just stayed with that. I found some luck in that, and I worked for a newspaper, and then I got on television and radio, and pretty well immersed in the whole sports writing scene. And
was that all sports or one
all
in particular?
Sports, all different kinds of sports. And I did everything from the Olympic Games to the Iditarod dog sled race to running with the Bulls in Pamplona to the World Series, NBA Finals. And really was doing very well, and probably would have just stayed in that world had something not happened, which was very fortuitous and life-changing, and that was when I was 37 years old. I happened to flip the television set one night and saw an old professor of mine whose name was Morrie, and he was on a TV program talking to the host about what it was like to die from Lou Gehrig's disease, or ALS, what we call. And he and I had been very close when I was in college, and he was really more like an uncle to me than a professor. And then in my rush to ambition to do all those things that I just said, I forgot about him for 16 years, just never contacted him, always meant to, but was too busy, too busy. And all of a sudden here he was dying, and I went to go see him once. I thought it would be a one-time visit, and I was so taken with his amazing attitude towards his dying and his life, I realized that when I flew home, he was 78 years old and dying, and I was 37 years old and healthy, and he was much happier with his life than I was. So I began to go back the next Tuesday and the next Tuesday and the next Tuesday, and what turned out to be all the Tuesdays left in his life. I wrote a book about that experience for the sole purpose of paying his medical bills. That was the only reason that I did it. Most publishers turned it down, told me it was boring, nobody was interested. I found one just before he died, got enough money to pay his bills, and wrote a little book called Tuesdays with Morrie. And then I planned on going back into sports writing. And Tuesdays with Morrie had a different idea for my life, and it became ultimately the most successful memoir ever published.
Because it started off quite slowly, didn't it?
Oh yeah, nobody knew about it. It didn't come out on a bestseller list or anything like that. In fact, it came out in August, which is not a big time for books. Came out in August, and it just kind of, sat there.
So was it all word of mouth?
It was word of mouth, and it didn't show up on a bestsellers list until about 4 months after it came out, and that was at the very, very bottom. And then it slowly started to work its way up. And in April of the following year, so it came out in August, in April of the following year, it went to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list, and then it stayed there for 4 years.
What were your feelings as you saw it climbing up the bestseller list?
It was surreal because I didn't believe then, and I don't believe now, that it was about me. I really believe it was about Morrie's wisdom. I think Morrie had a lot to offer people, and I think that people were able to find themselves in that book somewhere. They either identify with me as kind of a lost, ambitious, very type A personality who is trying to figure out, well, wait a minute, is this all there is to life? Or they identify with Morrie as a guy who's reached the end of his life and kind of sees what's really valuable and what isn't. Anyone who's ever had a grandparent, a teacher, someone who's influenced them older could relate to that story. And I didn't realize how universal it was until I'm still realizing it. I'm here in Dubai, and I'm running into people who live in Dubai and read the book in Arabic and say, oh, the book changed my life. And I said, wow, I've never even set foot here, and here's a story that they're saying changed their life. So, and it changed mine. And basically,
in what way?
I stopped being a sports writer essentially and began to focus on stories that were about life and death, good and bad, how we spend our lives, what our value systems are. And even if I wanted to kind of deviate from that, Steve, every day of my life since Tuesdays with Morrie came out, someone will come up to me and say, my mother died of cancer, and the last thing we did was read your book together. Can I talk to you about it? So I became a receptacle for every sad story, every someone with sick story that you could imagine, sometimes hundreds a day. And so when that happens to you, you become a different person. You become very aware of the sadness in the world and the struggles that people go through every minute when you don't even realize it. They might just be a face on a plane or a face in a crowd at a ball game, but then all of a sudden they come up and they tell you about this tragedy that they're dealing with, and you realize almost everybody is walking around with some sadness, some question about life that they're struggling with. So it made me very aware of that, and all my work began to start reflecting that and going in that direction.
Were you with Morrie at the end?
Not on the very last day. I was with him 2 days before.
How was he at the end?
Brilliant in his own way, in that the last thing that he said to me was, he made me hold his hand. This was the last visit we had, and he made me hold his hand. He said, I want to ask you a favor, and I could barely speak. And I said, okay. And he said, after I'm dead, I want you to come visit me at my grave. I said, all right, well, I was going to do that anyhow. Well, not the way everybody else is going to come. I want you to come when you got some time. Bring a blanket, bring some sandwiches, and I want you to talk to me about the world and your life. And I said, wait a minute, you want me to come to a cemetery, have a picnic at your tombstone, and talk to the air? And he said, yes, just like we're talking now. I love how we talk. And I said, well, Morrie, it won't be like we're talking now, because you won't be you won't be able to talk back. And he looked at me as if I were being very naive, and he said, well, Mitch, I'll make you a deal. After I'm dead, you talk, I'll listen. And that was about the last thing that he said to me. And I have realized that in that sentence was really everything he was ever trying to say to me, and everything I've been trying to write about that book and others. Because if you make time for people as he did, if you invest in the relationships in your life as he did, then when you're gone, you're not 100% gone. You can talk to the people who were there, not because they believe in ghosts, but because you put your voice inside them. So the same way I can hear my mother, I can hear my father, I can hear Morrie, because of the time that they spent with me. And so I can talk to them after they're gone, but only because of the time that they invested in me. And I'm trying to do the same now in my life with the people that matter to me.
Did you agree to carry out Morrie's last wish?
Oh, I've been there many times.
Have you?
I don't bring the sandwiches. I just think that they'll arrest me. I just think that if you're in a cemetery eating, they're going to come and say, "Okay, pal, let's go." So,
this is not a picnic.
Yeah,
place.
this is. What do you think this is? So, but I do go to his tombstone. Sure. Oh yeah, it's a lovely place. I've had many conversations with Morrie.
Well, another person you've interacted with and become part of their life was a little girl from Haiti called Chica.
Yeah.
And you've written all about it in the little book, your latest book here, which is Finding Chica. Have I got the pronunciation of her name right?
Chica.
Yeah.
That's right.
So this is your latest book. Tell us all about Chica. I bet we're all very keen to find out.
Well, this in some ways is sort of the companion book to Tuesdays with Morrie 25 years later. So I operate an orphanage in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. I'm there every month. I have 52 children that my wife and I and all of our staff raised there. Chica was born 3 days before the earthquake. So on the third day of her life, she was inside a cinder block house, lying on her mother's chest, tiny little building, and the earth shook, the house came down.
What year was this?
In 2010,
2010.
when the earthquake was.
Okay.
And the earth shook, the roof fell off, the walls came down, and they survived amazingly, even though their house crumbled around them. And that night, Chica slept out in the sugarcane fields in a little bed of leaves. She was 3 days old, and she was sleeping in the dirt. So she was born tough, as you can imagine, and she would need to be tough. Her mother would die a couple years later, giving birth to a baby brother, because there was no doctor present, and something happened, and she died in the same bed that the baby was born. And Chica was taken away and was brought to our orphanage. And we took her in, and for a couple of years, at age 3 and 4 and 5, she was the loudest, bossiest, most curious kid that we had, and she told all the other kids where to go, what to do, and she was just a delight, just funny and amazing. And then when she was 5 years old, she was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And they basically couldn't figure out what it was in Haiti, but they said, whatever it is, nobody can cure her here in Haiti. Nobody can help her here in Haiti. So we brought her to America thinking that, well, it's American medicine, they'll figure it out, she'll be back home in no time. And my wife and I took her in, and she never went home. It turned out to be something much more serious than anyone thought, something called DIPG, which is always a killer, always fatal. They told us she'd be dead in 4 months. But my wife and I said, you don't know this little girl. You know, she survived an earthquake.
She's a fighter.
She's a fighter, and if she's going to fight, we're going to fight. And Finding Chica is the story of our 2-year, not 4 months, not 8 months, not 16 months, not 20, 2-year journey with Chica around the world trying to find a cure, but along the way, how we found a family. It's not a sad book. It's not a book about disease. It's a book about how you make a family from the most unlikely conditions, sources, people. She didn't look like us, didn't talk like us, didn't have our DNA, but she couldn't have been more of a daughter to my wife and me than if she was a spitting image of us, and I wanted to write that story.
Was she as feisty at home as she was in the orphanage?
She was a pistol. I mean, there was nothing. She wasn't afraid of anything. She wasn't intimidated by anything. She'd sit in the back of the car and sing "Doe a deer" and "Email deer," and we'd say, "Chica, it's female." "What?" "It's female deer, not email." "No, it's my mouth. I can say what I want." You know, I mean, that was Chica. She would correct you. She would. She'd be in the car with other people. If they started singing, she didn't like what they were singing. She'd go, "Silence!" I mean, she just had. But you know, when you realize she was battling a brain tumor all this time, you encouraged that kind of bravery. You encouraged that kind of bravado because she said, "Yes, Chica, you're going to need this. Hang on to this." And we encouraged it whenever we saw it, which was daily.
Did she endure all the different treatments with fortitude?
She did. She never once asked why. She never once asked, "What do I have?" And we, at age 5, decided we weren't going to tell her. We weren't going to introduce cancer to a 5-year-old's world. We just said that, you know, you're not feeling so well. She knew she wasn't walking right and things like that. And the doctors are going to make you better. They're going to do everything they can. And meanwhile, she was so interested in just living life, so interested in playing, so interested in going on a carousel horse, so interested in playing Uno and beating you, you know, so interested in watching a princess movie or anything that, you remember, you take a 5-year-old out of Haiti, and you know, the second poorest country in the world, and all of a sudden she's in America as an only child, and she's pretty much going to have, you know, everything to pick from, and everything is a miracle to her. Every squirrel in a tree was a miracle. Every stoplight was a miracle. Every post office box was a miracle. The remote control was a miracle. You know, a swimming pool was a miracle. So it was just like discovering the world through the eyes of a child every single day. And we took her to Disneyland once, and I thought, well, Disneyland, I mean, this is going to blow her mind. You know, there's all these rides. Which one's she going to pick to be on? And as we walked in, and all the rides were in front of her, a little duck came out of a pond and started walking across the way, and she said, "Look, a duck!" And she just started chasing this duck around all, you know, this $1 billion worth of entertainment, and she was chasing a duck.
Chasing the duck.
So she could find that kind of wonder, and she taught us so many lessons about, you know, the things that children can teach you that you lose as an adult. And my wife and I hadn't had children of our own, so this was actually our first, although we have 52 orphans that we consider our family, and I'm there every month, and so obviously they're a huge part of our life. But having a 5-year-old sleeping at the base of your bed when you're in your mid to late 50s is a new experience. And everything you thought you knew about your life and your timing and your routine was done, you know, and all the clocks melted and everything became Chica's time and Chica's world, and we were immersed in it, and it was lovely.
Do you still operate the orphanage in Haiti?
I will for the rest of my life.
Tell us about it. And also for people listening to us, viewing us on this Emirates flight, maybe tell us how we can get involved.
Sure. Well, so as I say, Haiti is the second poorest country in the world and the poorest in the western side of the world. The average Haitian, if they have a job, earns $2 a day. Most of them don't have jobs. Education you have to pay for. There's no clean water, roads, healthcare access, all the basics of life, electricity, all missing. So we take kids who have suffered the worst of this type of fate. Kids who have been abandoned and left to die under trees. Kids who have been left at tuberculosis centers and nobody ever came back for them. Kids who lost their parents in earthquakes or hurricanes. And we bring them in. They all have their own beds. They have 3 meals a day that are healthy. We have a school on the premises, 4 hours in English, 3 hours in French every single day. Our kids are on track to actually graduate at 18, which is unheard of in Haiti because you have to pay for public school, and so you only go when you have any money. And our goal is to get them all college educated. We've got 52 scholarships lined up, believe it or not, for our 52 kids. And our oldest 2 are already in college in the United States. One is a pre-med, he's 4.0. I'm very happy to say. This is a kid who did his studying on his lap. He never had a desk. He had a flashlight and a pencil, and because there's no power at night. And now when we brought him into the dorm room and he saw he got a desk in the dorm room, he started to cry. He said, "Oh, my whole life I always wanted a desk." So our children are very appreciative and very hardworking, and their goal is to get college educated and then come back to Haiti and make Haiti a better country. And first they come back and they work at the orphanage for 2 years in whatever field they're in. So when he becomes a doctor, he'll be our doctor. We have one who became a cook, he's our cook. And then after they're done giving back to where they grew up, then they go out into Haitian society and hopefully put an end to the cycle that brought them there. So it's called the Have Faith Haiti Orphanage. People can find it at havefaithhaiti.org on the web. And you know, you can sponsor kids, or you can come down and work. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to get involved. But
so how do you get the funding for all of this?
Mostly here, to be honest with you. Haiti, unfortunately, has kind of fallen from favor in a lot of people's minds in terms of a place to give. Back in 2010, when the earthquake happened, everybody was giving money.
And now, there was a hurricane as well, right?
Yeah, there was a hurricane about 5 years ago, and Hurricane Matthew, but most people ended up giving money to Puerto Rico and that, and didn't realize how it devastated Haiti too. So to be honest, a lot of it comes from my own pocket, but it's not like we don't welcome the help. And you know, I want to tell you one last thing about Chica that pertains to this, because the book is broken down into these 7 short little lessons that Chica taught my wife and me about life, and the last of which I felt is the most important one. When Chica couldn't walk anymore, which was the end of the disease, she needed to be carried from place to place. She would lift her arms and I would take her wherever, the car or the kitchen or the bathroom, whatever. I was her taxi, you know. Mm-hmm. And one day we were coloring at the table, and I looked at my watch and I realized I was late for work, and I popped up and I said, "Chica, I gotta go." And she said, "No, Mr. Mitch, stay and play." I said, "Chica, I have to work." She said, "Mr. Mitch, I have to play." And I said, "Yeah, but it's not the same. This is my job." And she crossed her arms and she said, "No, it isn't. Your job is carrying me," like that. And of course that was Chica. And I laughed, but then I realized, boy, did she just say that right. Of course my job is carrying her all of our jobs is to carry our children, all of them, through good times and through the difficult times and through illness. And if you have the means, as I have been blessed to have, then it is our job to carry the poor children of the world and the sick and the forgotten, like the kids that we take care of in Haiti. And so I believe we have an obligation to these children, and I certainly do. And I plan on being there forever to take care of them, watch them grow, and make sure that they're looked after, because no child should be left without a means. No child should be told that Chica was, there's nothing that anybody can do to help you. There's always something that somebody, an adult, should do to help a child. And that's all the proceeds from this book go to the orphanage. I'm not keeping any. There's no profit for me, or nor should there be. And I hope that people who read it, if they're so moved, would help, whether there are children or any other children in the world. There are a lot of poor and needy kids that need to be taken care of.
Mr. Mitch, I take my hat off to you, as I'm sure everybody watching us on this Emirates flight is doing right now. The book is called Finding Chica, and I kid you not, this is one of the most inspirational books I've read. Thank you so much for writing it. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us, and I wish you every success, not only with the book. I hope you sell millions and millions of copies so that the proceeds go to help these poor kids. Just please mention again the website that people can get involved, or if they want to donate something.
HaveFaithHaiti.org. All one word, HaveFaithHaiti.org.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Cheers,
Cheers, Mitch.
Thanks.